My name is Ethan, and I'm 8 years old. At least I was 8 when everything in my life started to change. Up until then, my days were filled with drawing superheroes, climbing the big oak tree in our backyard, and dreaming about becoming an astronaut one day. Mom said I could do anything I wanted when I grew up, but then the doctors told us I might not get to grow up at all. It started with the tiredness. At first, I thought I was just lazy, the way Dad joked about when I didn't want to finish my chores. But soon, I couldn't even run halfway across the yard without feeling like I'd run a marathon. My legs hurt all the time and my head felt heavy. Mum noticed right away and kept asking me if I was okay, even when I said yes. But then the bruises started showing up, big ones, all over my arms and legs, and that's when we went to the doctor. I remember the cold room and the weird smell of hand sanitizer. Mum and Dad sat across from me, holding hands like they were afraid to let go. The doctor, an older man with glasses that slipped down his nose, looked at me first, then at my parents. His voice was serious but calm. Ethan has acute lymphoblastic leukemia, he said. I didn't know what that meant, but Mom started crying, and Dad didn't say anything for a long time. The doctor kept talking about treatments and tests and something called chemotherapy. It all sounded like a lot of big words to me, but I could tell by the way Dad's face got all tight and Mum's tears wouldn't stop that it was bad, really bad. Is it like being sick with the flu? I asked, trying to understand. The doctor knelt down to my level and smiled a little, but it didn't feel like a happy smile. It's more serious than the flu, Ethan, he said, but we're going to do everything we can to help you get better. The next few weeks were like a blur. I was in and out of hospitals, poked with needles more times than I could count. Mom stayed by my side the whole time, reading me stories and bringing me my favourite snacks, even when I couldn't eat much. Dad kept saying everything was going to be okay, but his eyes told a different story. They looked sad, like he wanted to cry, but wouldn't let himself. At first, I thought the treatments were working. I'd draw little superheroes in my notebook, fighting off the bad cells in my body. But after a while, I started feeling weaker. My hair fell out, and the medicine made me feel sick all the time. One day, I heard the doctor talking to my parents outside my room. We're running out of options, he said. I'm sorry. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew enough. My body was losing the fight, and I didn't know what that meant for me. All I knew was that I was scared, and the people I loved the most couldn't fix it. The days got quieter. I spent most of my time in bed, staring at the ceiling or looking out the window at the trees. Mom said it was okay to rest, that I needed my strength, but I didn't feel strong anymore. I felt like all the energy had been drained out of me, like a balloon with a hole in it. At night, when the house was quiet, I'd think about things I'd never thought about before. Mum, I asked one evening as she tucked me in, what happens when you die? Her eyes got all watery, but she tried to smile. Well, sweetheart, she said, some people believe we go to a place where we're happy forever, a place with no pain or sickness. Like heaven? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, like heaven. Do you think I'll go there? I whispered. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Of course, Ethan, you're the bravest, sweetest boy I know. If anyone belongs there, it's you. But I wasn't so sure. What if heaven wasn't like that? What if it was different? What if it wasn't real? These questions swirled around in my head every night, making it hard to sleep. I started asking Dad too, and even my older brother, Jacob. But no one seemed to have answers that made sense. Sometimes, when the pain was really bad, I'd close my eyes and imagine myself floating up into the sky, past the clouds, into a place where nothing hurt anymore. But other times I was afraid. What if dying was like falling asleep and never waking up? What if I forgot Mom and Dad? What if they forgot me? One night, as I lay in bed with the lights off, I whispered into the darkness, God, if you're real, can you hear me? What happens next? I didn't expect an answer, but it felt good to say it out loud, like sending a letter into the stars. As the days went by, I could feel it, something changing inside me. The doctors didn't say much anymore, but I saw the way they looked at my parents, and I knew my body was getting tired, too tired to fight anymore. But my mind kept wondering about what was next, even if no one could tell me. I didn't know it then, but I was about to find out. I knew the end was coming. I could see it in the way the nurses looked at me, their smiles softer, tinged with something I couldn't quite understand until now. I could feel it in Mom's hands as she held mine, trembling despite her trying to be brave for me. My breaths were short and shallow, and every part of my body felt heavy, like it was sinking into the bed. The hospital room was filled with quiet whispers and the soft hum of machines. My dad sat on the other side of the bed, his face turned toward the window, but I saw the tears he tried to hide. My big brother Jacob stood in the corner, arms crossed tightly, like he was holding himself together with sheer will. Mom leaned over me, stroking my cheek, her voice gentle and breaking all at once. It's okay, sweetheart, she whispered. You can rest now. I wanted to tell her I wasn't scared, but the words wouldn't come. It was like my body had stopped listening to me, my voice trapped somewhere deep inside. I felt a strange warmth creeping over me, starting from my chest and spreading outward. My vision blurred, the edges of the room growing darker, but I could still hear them. Mom's quiet sobs, Dad's muffled breathing, and the sound of Jacob pacing, his sneakers squeaking against the tile floor. Then, all at once, it was like someone had flipped a switch. The heaviness was gone. The pain disappeared. I blinked, and suddenly I was looking down at myself. My body lay still in the hospital bed, my parents holding onto me as though they could keep me from slipping away. I tried to reach for them, to tell them I was still here, but my hands weren't hands anymore, just light, shimmering and weightless. I could hear everything, feel everything. The room was thick with grief, and it hurt in a way that was worse than any of the needles or machines. Don't cry, I wanted to say. I'm okay now. But no one could hear me. A soft light appeared at the edge of my vision, growing brighter with every second. It was warm, inviting, and as it pulled me closer, the sounds of the room faded. The sobs, the machines, the sterile coldness, all of it dissolved into a silence, so pure it felt like music. I drifted toward the light, not walking or running, just moving as if it was calling me. For a moment I hesitated, looking back at my family one last time. I love you, I whispered, even though I knew they couldn't hear. Then I let the light take me, carrying me into a place I couldn't yet understand, but already felt so deeply. The first thing I noticed was the sky. It wasn't like the sky back home, blue and scattered with clouds. This one shimmered like the surface of a lake, filled with colours I didn't have names for. The air was soft, almost alive, and every breath I took felt like it was filling me with something I'd been missing my whole life. It wasn't oxygen, it was peace. I stood on what felt like solid ground, though it wasn't earth. Beneath my feet was a surface that seemed to glow faintly, like it was made of light and glass. Around me, shapes began to appear, moving like shadows, but so full of brightness they left trails of color wherever they went. They weren't people exactly, but they weren't not people either. I didn't know how to describe them, except that they felt kind, like the way sunlight feels after a cold winter. Ethereal music filled the air, but there were no instruments I could see, just melodies that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't just sound, it was feeling, wrapping around me like a hug. Then a figure stepped forward. At first, it was just a shape in the light, but as it came closer, I could make out more details. It looked like a person, but so much more. Its face was radiant, glowing softly, and its eyes were like stars, endless and filled with something I could only call love. It didn't speak, not with words, but I heard it all the same. Ethan, the figure said, and the sound of my name felt like the gentlest breeze. You're safe now. Who are you? I asked, or maybe I just thought it. The being smiled, and the light around it grew warmer. I am a messenger, it said. I have come to guide you. The figure held out a hand, not a hand like mine used to be, but something that felt just as solid. As I took it, a feeling of pure joy surged through me. Together we began to walk, or float, or something in between, toward what looked like gates made of light, taller and brighter than anything I'd ever seen. Beyond them was a place so beautiful, it made my heart ache in the best way. This is heaven, the being said. For a moment I believed it. For a moment I thought I'd found forever. As I passed through the gates of light, my heart swelled with awe. Every step, or whatever it was I was doing, felt like stepping into something perfect, untouched by the pain I'd left behind. The air was alive with warmth and the sound of celestial melodies that resonated inside me. The being beside me, the one I thought was my guide, smiled gently as we entered a vast, radiant expanse. At first, everything seemed just as I'd imagined heaven would be. Fields of golden light stretched endlessly, dotted with shimmering figures moving gracefully. Their forms were like whispers of light, their faces kind yet indistinct. Rivers that sparkled like diamonds wove through the landscape, and the sky shimmered with hues I couldn't name. My chest filled with a peace so profound I thought I might burst. But then something shifted. The light dimmed, not all at once, but subtly, as if a shadow had crept in from the edges. I turned to my guide, but its expression had changed. The warmth was still there, but now its eyes held something deeper, something almost sorrowful. Ethan, it said, what you see now is not all there is. The words barely left its lips before the landscape began to change. The golden fields faded into something darker, the once crystal rivers turning murky. The serene figures around us stopped their graceful movements, their faces twisting into expressions of pain and anguish. The air, once so full of music, now carried faint whispers, words I couldn't quite understand, but they filled me with unease. What's happening? I asked, my voice trembling. This is the true heaven, the being said. Not what you expected, but what is. Before I could respond, the whispers grew louder, turning into cries and wails. Shapes began to emerge from the shadows, figures I hadn't noticed before. These weren't the radiant beings I'd seen earlier. They were hunched, bound by chains that seemed to pull them toward the ground. Their faces were etched with despair, their mouths forming silent screams. This is a place of truth, the being explained, its voice calm but heavy. Not all who enter heaven find peace. For some, this is a realm of reckoning. I stared, unable to speak, as the figures moved closer. The guide continued, heaven is not just eternal reward. It is also accountability, a reflection of every choice, every action. Here, the weight of one soul is fully known. My mind raced. This wasn't the heaven I'd heard about. This wasn't the peace I thought I was promised. It was something else entirely, something terrifying. Before I could fully process the darkness creeping through heaven, the air around me thickened. My guide raised its hand, and the world seemed to ripple. The radiant gates behind me disappeared, replaced by a vast, shifting void. Shapes and images began to form within it, like a canvas of moving shadows. This is what you must see, the guide said. The first vision was of a man, his face contorted with anger, raising his hand against another. The strike landed, and I felt the pain of the victim as if it were my own. The scene shifted, showing a crowd of people turning their backs on someone pleading for help. Their indifference cut deeper than any blow. One by one, more images followed. Acts of cruelty, selfishness, and betrayal. Each one felt personal, as though I was not just watching, but living the pain they caused. These are the sins of humanity, the guide said. Each action ripples outward, affecting more than the one who commits it. Then the images grew larger, more overwhelming. I saw entire cities consumed by flames, people screaming as the sky turned dark. Wars raged, their horror spilling into every corner of the vision. Starving children cried out, their voices merging into a single haunting wail. My chest tightened as the sheer weight of the suffering crushed me. "Stop!" I cried, tears streaming down my face. "Why are you showing me this?" "You must understand," the guide said, its tone unwavering. "This is the legacy of humanity, of every soul, individually and collectively." The vision shifted again, this time to people I recognized. My neighbor, the kind old man who used to give me candy, appeared in the void, but his face was twisted, his voice lashing out in anger at someone unseen. My teacher from school followed, her calm demeanor replaced by a sneer as she ignored a child in tears. Even my parents appeared, their voices raised in arguments I hadn't known they'd had. Each scene pierced me like a knife, unraveling the image I had of the people I loved. I turned to the guide, my voice shaking. "This isn't fair. Everyone makes mistakes. Why should they suffer for this?" The being's eyes softened, but its expression remained firm. "It is not about mistakes, Ethan. It is about the choices made and the impact left behind. Every soul carries the weight of its actions." The visions began to blur, their intensity overwhelming me. I fell to my knees, clutching my head as the cries and images swirled around me. "I don't understand," I whispered. "How can anyone be saved?" The guide knelt beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "That is the question, Ethan, and it is the answer you must seek." As the void dissolved into silence, I was left trembling, the weight of what I'd seen pressing on me like a storm. The heaven I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a truth I didn't know if I could bear. I wanted to believe that the visions I'd seen were only temporary, a glimpse of some lesson I was supposed to understand. But as the light returned, revealing the landscape of heaven once more, I realized that the weight of those images had settled into the very fabric of this place. Heaven was not what I thought it would be. It wasn't all golden light and eternal joy. Not for everyone. The angel who had guided me so far stood beside me, its expression as calm as ever, but tinged with something I could only describe as sorrow. It gestured toward the horizon, and I saw them, souls, countless and radiant, but weighed down by something unseen. They wandered in silence, their faces etched with emotions I didn't understand, regret, longing, and a kind of sorrow that seemed endless. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They are those who have entered heaven," the angel replied, its voice soft but firm. "But they carry with them the unresolved burdens of their earthly lives. Heaven is a place of truth, Ethan, and truth does not erase the past, it reveals it." As I watched, one of the wandering figures passed close by. Its form was translucent, its face obscured by a faint glow, but I could sense its anguish. Whispers surrounded it, voices echoing from somewhere deep within. I could have. The words repeated over and over, a never-ending chorus of regret. "What are they saying?" I asked, my heart pounding. They hear the echoes of their choices, the angel said. The unkind words, the missed opportunities to love, the moments of selfishness, these echoes stay with them because they were never reconciled in life. Not all who enter heaven find peace, Ethan. Some must face the truth of what they left undone. The ground beneath us shifted, revealing a large, reflective surface. It wasn't a mirror, it was something deeper, something alive. As I gazed into it, I saw flashes of lives. A father who ignored his children, a friend who betrayed another, a woman who turned away from someone in need. Each story was sharp and raw, their emotions bleeding into the air around me. Why can't they move on? I asked, tears streaming down my face. The angel turned to me, its eyes piercing yet compassionate. Peace is not a gift, Ethan. It is earned through reconciliation with oneself, with others, and with the truth. These souls carry their burdens because they never sought to lay them down. The weight of those words pressed against me like a stone. Heaven wasn't just a place of joy, it was a realm of reckoning, where truth illuminated everything, even the shadows we thought we'd left behind. I felt like I couldn't breathe, even though I no longer needed air. The enormity of what I had seen, the suffering, the regret, overwhelmed me. I turned to the angel, desperate for answers. Why are you showing me this? What am I supposed to do? The angel's expression softened, and for the first time I thought I saw something like compassion in its radiant eyes. Ethan, it said, you have been chosen to carry this truth back to the living world. Back? I asked, my voice shaking. You mean I'm not staying here? The angel nodded. Your time has not yet come. You must return and share what you have learned. Humanity must know that the choices they make every day have eternal consequences. Time is fragile, and the opportunity to live with compassion and accountability is fleeting. I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. I can't. No one will believe me. They'll think I'm crazy. The angel's gaze grew firm. It does not matter whether they believe you. What matters is that you speak the truth. You have seen what lies beyond, and that knowledge carries a burden you cannot escape, but it also carries a purpose. As it spoke, the air around us shifted again, revealing a massive hourglass suspended in the void. Its sands flowed steadily, each grain sparkling as it fell. This, the angel said, is the measure of time given to each soul, but the sands do not flow evenly. They can stop without warning, leaving lives incomplete. I stared at the hourglass, mesmerized and horrified. The sands seemed to slow as I watched, then quickened, as if mocking the idea of control. What happens if they run out? I asked. The angel's silence was answer enough. Then it turned to me, its radiant form seeming larger and more intense. Ethan, it said, your return will not come without cost. You will carry the burden of what you have seen for the rest of your days. The pain, the regret, the sorrow, it will be with you always. But so will the truth, and with it the chance to make a difference. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't want this. I didn't want to leave this place or carry the weight of what I had seen. But deep down, I knew I didn't have a choice. Will I ever find peace? I whispered. The angel's expression softened again. Peace is not something you find, Ethan. It is something you create. Go and help others create it too. Before I could respond, the light around me began to shift, pulling me backward. The radiant figures, the shimmering fields, and even the angel blurred and faded. The last thing I heard was the angel's voice, soft but insistent. Do not forget what you have seen. Time is fleeting, but love is eternal. And then everything went dark. The first thing I felt was the weight of my body pressing down on me like I was emerging from deep water. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, and a sharp beeping sound filled my ears. Voices, frantic and layered, echoed around me. "He's breathing!" someone shouted. "Get the doctor, now!" My eyes fluttered open, the harsh light of the hospital room stabbing into them. The familiar faces of my family swam into view. Mum's tear-streaked face hovering over me, Dad clutching her shoulder, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. Even Jacob, who always tried to act so tough, had tears running down his cheeks. "Ethan," Mum whispered, her voice shaking as she gripped my hand. "Oh my God, Ethan, you're back." The nurse at the foot of my bed called it a miracle, and maybe it was. I had been gone, really gone. I didn't need anyone to tell me that. I remembered the stillness of death, the weightless drift away from my body, and, most vividly, the light that had carried me to the other side. But as my family cried tears of joy and the doctors rushed in to confirm the impossible, I couldn't share in their happiness. My mind was racing, haunted by what I had seen, the beauty, yes, but also the sorrow, the endless suffering, the truth that heaven was not the sanctuary I had imagined as a boy. The next few days were a blur of tests and hushed conversations. Nurses would smile at me, calling me a fighter, but I didn't feel like one. My parents clung to me every chance they got, Dad kissing the top of my head, while Mom whispered prayers of thanks. Jacob tried to joke with me, saying, "You're like a cat, Ethan, 9 lives and counting." But the weight of what I carried made it impossible to laugh. At night, when the room was quiet, the memories would flood back. The angel's voice, the shimmering hourglass, the souls trapped in regret. It all played in my mind, like a movie I couldn't turn off. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, heard their whispers. On the third day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Sitting in bed with Mom and Dad by my side, I told them everything about the light, the angel, the visions, the horrifying truth that not everyone in heaven was at peace. Mom's face changed first. Her tears stopped, replaced by a look of confusion and worry. Dad shifted uncomfortably, glancing at her like they were sharing a silent conversation. "Ethan," Mom said softly, "you've been through a lot. Maybe it was a dream, a way for your brain to process everything." "It wasn't a dream," I said, my voice rising. "I saw it. Heaven isn't what we think it is. People are suffering there because of the choices they made here." Dad put a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. "Ethan, you don't have to carry this alone. Let's focus on you getting better, okay?" I wanted to scream at them, to make them understand, but their eyes told me they couldn't. Over the next few weeks, I tried telling others, friends, nurses, even the local pastor who came to visit me, but the reactions were always the same: polite nods, hesitant smiles, and quiet reassurances that I'd been through a lot. Each rejection cut deeper than the last, leaving me feeling more alone than I ever had before. They didn't want to hear the truth, not the kind I had to share, but deep down, I knew I couldn't stop. I had been sent back for a reason, even if no one believed me. When I was finally released from the hospital, the world outside felt different. Everything was the same: cars on the road, kids playing in yards, people laughing over coffee. But I couldn't see it the way I used to. I couldn't unsee what I had witnessed beyond the veil. My family tried to go back to normal, but I couldn't. Every conversation felt shallow, every smile tinged with the knowledge of how fragile it all was. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, I told them again, "I have to share what I saw. People need to know." Mom sighed, putting down her fork. Ethan, sweetheart, I love you, but you're just a child. People won't listen. They'll think. I don't care what they think, I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. This isn't about me. It's about them, about all of us. Dad frowned, but he didn't say anything. Jacob muttered something under his breath and left the table. Only Mum stayed, her eyes full of worry. Just be careful, Ethan, she said. People don't always want to hear the truth. She was right. The first time I shared my story publicly, people dismissed me as a kid with an overactive imagination. Some even laughed, but others, just a few, paused, their expressions changing as if my words had touched something deep within them. I started writing everything down, hoping that even if I couldn't convince the world, I might reach someone. The angel's warning echoed in my mind every day. Time is fleeting, but love is eternal. I told people to live with compassion, to forgive, to make things right before it was too late. Most didn't listen, but some did, and that was enough. The hardest part was losing people I cared about. Some friends stopped calling. Even my family grew distant, unsure how to handle the boy I had become. But I held on to the mission I'd been given, no matter how much it cost me. Now, as I sit here writing these words, I know my time is short. The doctors say my illness has returned, and this time there won't be a miracle. But I'm not afraid. I've seen what lies beyond, and I know that what we do here matters more than anything. To whoever reads this, I leave you with one plea. Seek the truth, love fiercely, forgive without hesitation, because when the sands in your hourglass run out, it's not the light you'll carry with you, it's the weight of your choices. Time is fleeting, but love is eternal. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right hand side, which is even more shocking.